What's up everyone, it's Kadi with Money Vesting. In this video, we are going to be talking about Visa, ticker symbol V, and they are going to be reporting their earnings next week on Wednesday, I believe. I got to double check here, just give me a second, but they are going to be reporting for the second quarter fiscal year 2023. So they're actually coming out on Tuesday, April 25th after the markets close. So in this video, I'm going to break down everything you need to know for Visa, and of course, we're going to calculate their intrinsic value and how much Visa should be worth today based on the forecasted earnings growth, revenue, valuations. We're going to dive into everything, including the technicals, and Visa has performed really well. It's almost back up to its all-time highs. So hope you guys enjoyed this video and find it helpful. If you do, make sure that you drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you're just joining us for the first time, link to our Discord and Patreon is going to be down below if you're interested in joining us, and of course getting access to all the buy and sell alerts, options alerts, trade ideas. We've got a community of over 3,700 members from all over the world talking about fundamental and technical analysis, including macroeconomics and stocks and options as well. There's a lot of opportunities to learn, and of course there's a lot of educational content as well, including private videos. So link's going to be down below if you're interested in joining us. So this right here is going to be Visa's stock chart. As you'll notice that it's trading at a little bit over $234. It has done really well since October, rallied a little bit over 34 to 35%. Year to date, the stock's up over 11.8%, so nothing to write home about, but it has done really well because even during the 2022 bear market and the entire sell-off, Visa was only down 29%, which was actually a lot less than the NASDAQ, and not to mention a lot less than a lot of individual stocks as well. And it is now almost back up to its all-time highs of $249.50. Now, before we go over to the technicals and the intrinsic value, I want to go over the first quarter numbers from Visa. Visa is an incredibly profitable, high-quality business to say the least, right? So net revenues coming in at just under $8 billion in the first quarter 23, growing 12% year over year. $4.2 billion in net income on a GAAP basis. That was 6% growth year over year. So margins are really, really high. I always tell people, like, if you want to start a company, start a business, aim for having margins as high as Visa, because they've got a 50% net income margin, which means for every $1 in revenue the company generates, 50 cents trickles down to the very bottom line as a profit. Earnings per share came in at $1.99. That was a growth of 8% year over year. Non-GAAP net income was $4.6 billion, 17% growth year over year, and non-GAAP earnings per share $2.18, and that was a 21% growth on a year-over-year basis. Now, payments volume did increase 7% year-over-year. Cross-border volume, excluding intra-Europe, did also increase 31%, and cross-border volume overall grew 22% for the company. Somehow, they manage. They can grow. They know how to grow. This right here is going to be operational performance metrics, monthly growth, total credit and debit. You can see a little bit of an uptick coming in since January of 23. We are seeing these numbers come down. In other words, from same time last year, I mean, they are significantly lower. The credit usage, the payments volume for debit, they are down, but we're seeing a little bit of an uptick happening in January at the moment. This right here is going to be payment volume results. Again, 7% growth on a year-over-year basis. 11% came from credit. 3% came from debit. So again, if you combine those two, 14% divided by 2, that's 7% for Visa overall. And a total $3 billion in nominal USD payment volume and $1.5 billion in US. International was $1.49 billion. And this right here is going to be that breakdown between credit and debit between US and international for the company as well. This right here is going to be the total number of cards as of the fourth quarter fiscal year 22. So Visa right now has over 4.1 billion cards outstanding in its network, which is an insane footprint if you consider a payment processing company. I don't think a MasterCard or Discover or American Express are anywhere close to these numbers. So again, 4.1 billion, that's an 8% growth from same time last year when they were at 3.8 billion, and they've got 1.2 billion credit cards and 2.8 billion debit cards outstanding in the network at the moment in the world. Of course, many people have multiple credit cards and debit cards, so that's why it is going to be almost 50% of the world population, but multiple people have multiple cards on them. This right here is going to be the actual numbers. So again, 10% growth on a year-over-year basis, $3.5 billion. Service revenue came in at $3.8 billion. We got international transaction revenue, almost $2.8 billion. Other revenues, $587 million. Everything grew for the business, 12% aggregate growth, 7.9, almost $8 billion in revenue. Operating expenses, $2.8 billion, so really, really low. And as a result, net income was $4.1 billion and $1.99 on a GAAP basis was the earnings per share. Now, going into the actual earnings results for Visa for the second quarter 23, the expected EPS is going to be $1.99 on revenues of $7.7 billion. We're coming off of the holiday season, so first quarter we do see a little bit of a dip on a quarter-over-quarter basis. That's going to be true for almost all companies out there, including Amazon, including Netflix, including Meta, all these companies, advertising, payment processing, streaming. You will see a little bit of a dip on a quarter-over-quarter basis. But if you take into account $1.99 in EPS, and if you come over to Visa and what they reported for this same quarter ending in March, and you go back to this number over here, which is actually going to be over here, I believe, March, they reported $1.79. So that is still going to be some growth, which is very rare in this market environment. So props to Visa for pretty much expecting for us to see a very nice increase on a year-over-year basis, because $1.99 and you divide that by $1.79, that's going to be a growth of 11%. I gotta give credit where credit's due. I mean, not a lot of companies are reporting growth right now on a year-over-year basis, and Visa being a very fantastic business, $1.99, that's going to be 11% growth. $7.7 billion or $7.8 billion is going to be that revenue. 15 upward revisions in the last 90 days and 7 downward revisions. This right here is going to be their balance sheet. So as of December 31st, 2022, they were sitting on just over $13.3 billion worth of cash. We've got investment securities sitting at $2.7 billion. So all in all, they're sitting on about $16 billion of cash and short-term investments. Total current assets, $27.8 billion. And total assets are sitting at over $85 billion, of which goodwill is about $18 billion. So very, very small amount. And we've got long-term debt sitting at $20 billion. So again, cash and cash equivalents sitting at about $16 billion, long-term debt at $20 billion, which does give the company a positive net debt, meaning they've got more debt than cash on the balance sheet. It's not the end of the world, because they do have very nice current asset to current liability ratio. They've got total asset to total liability ratio is also pretty good. And it's a very high free cash flow business. So Visa, that's not a concern there because of all the reasons that I just pointed out. So a little bit of a improvement can be done, but overall, very nice numbers. They have consistently been buying back shares as well, from 2.6 billion all the way down to 2.1 billion shares outstanding. So that's been always the case for Visa, consistent share buybacks. And we've got, revenue per share, EBITDA, diluted earnings per share, every single thing has been growing and trending in the right direction. Margins, as I already pointed out, 97% gross margins, EBITDA margins at over 70%, net margins at over 50%. We got very strong return on capital, equity, and assets as well. So no problems there. I would own Visa. I mean, if it were up to me, if the pricing was good, I would own Visa literally in a heartbeat. No doubt about it, because it's a fantastic business, in my opinion, to own. But it's all about valuation and the pricing. And right now it's trading at almost 30 times earnings multiple, and a price to sales which is a little bit way above my sweet spot at over 14 to 16 times sales and over 25 times cash flows. And we got a price through earnings on enterprise value EBITDA at over 21 to 23. So it is certainly a lot higher. Sector median is about 8.5 times earnings, and price to sales a little bit closer to 2, trading at 7 times higher its sector median. And on a 5-year average basis, it's pretty much in line with how it's usually traded. But the future is not the same as the past. The future expected growth is certainly slowing down, as you can see over here. They are expected to grow, right? So I wouldn't necessarily call this like a growth stock, but it is a good growing company with earnings expected to still grow in double digits. We're talking 13, 14, 15% over the next 4 to 5 years. So once we plug in these numbers into our spreadsheet, the growth rate that we get over the next 4 years is going to be 12.95%, closer to 13% is going to be that growth rate for Visa. Now I'm going to be generous here. I'm going to go with 14% just to, see what the numbers look like. So we're going to go with 14% growth over the next 5 years. P multiple, I'm not going to go with 29 or 30 or 35. I'm going to go with a modest 20 times P multiple, because as the numbers get bigger and bigger, P multiples do drop in the future. So that's going to give us a PEG ratio of 1.4. And right now, as it stands, the PEG ratio for Visa is 1.74. It's going to be very much in line with the current PEG ratio, a little bit lower. Discount rate is going to stay put at 12%, 10% margin of safety, and consistent share buyback of 1% per year. We get down to a fair value of $144, and the market price right now, $234 per share at the moment. This right here is going to be that sensitivity grid. So right now, since Visa is trading at $234, we are very close to some of these levels right here, I would say, 222, 224, around here. the ones that I just highlighted. And you can see that market's expectations right now is a much higher growth rate of over 20% over the next 4 to 5 years, and a P multiple of closer to 24 to 26. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because if you think about the growth rate 20 divided by 24, we get a PEG ratio of, in fact, actually that's going to be the other way around. So if we do 24 divided by 20% growth rate, we get a PEG ratio of 1.2, which is pretty good, right? It's not a big deal. 1.2 is a reasonable PEG ratio. But it's the market's expectation that the company is actually going to grow at over 20%. And so it deserves a 24 to 26 times multiple, which is where I disagree with, right? So if the future doesn't pan out at 20% growth, instead it's 18% or 14% or 12%, then of course the current value is going to be dramatically lower than where it's trading at the moment. So those are some of the reasons why I am not as optimistic, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'd rather be conservative and right than be aggressive and wrong, as I've already mentioned time and time again, because when you're aggressive and you're pricing in for the best case scenario and it doesn't pan out, the risk and the danger to that is significantly greater than if you are conservative and you are right, or even if you miss opportunities in that sense, then the risk is not that high as opposed to if you're aggressive and wrong. So that's something to keep in mind. So 144, 145, some of the levels to watch. I mean, there's a flexibility range plus minus 5%, which will bring us up to 152 to as low as 137. And this right here is going to be that technical analysis for Visa. Now 173 is a very strong support, and I believe 152 is the higher end of that flexibility range. So 173 is an area where I could see myself once again starting to accumulate more Visa. But I used to have Visa back in 2021. I did exit out of my position for a small profit, and since then it hasn't really done anything. So it's just gone sideways since 21, as most stocks have. But I am considering reestablishing a position in Visa, but only if the pricing is right. So support level is going to stay put at 175, a very strong area of demand inside this green rectangle. We've got a resistance at closer to 234, exactly where the price is trading now. We've gone rejected here back in February, got rejected here back in February of 22, got rejected here back in October of 21, and right now we're right at that level. And if you do end up breaking out on earnings, next resistance is going to be all the way up to 250, almost in line with that all-time high for Visa as well. If you take a look at the daily chart, we are definitely a little bit on the overextended, overbought side as the RSI approaches 65 levels. So that is going to be considered a bit overbought. Not exactly overbought, but it's definitely approaching those levels. And so is the MACD, a little bit on the overbought side. And of course, you can see that we are just consolidating sideways at that resistance on low volume for Visa. So if you do get a strong beat, if you do get a good guidance, if you do get some good numbers, it's possible that we break to the upside, hit a new all-time high. 250 is going to be that next target and that next resistance, that all-time high. But of course, if Visa does provide any shaky earnings, shaky guidance, consumer sentiment starts to slow down, spending starts to pull back, then it's possible that we do see a bit of a pullback. Now, intermediate support, medium-term support is going to stay put roughly around here at 208, 209. Could get a little bit of a bounce back higher from those levels if and when the stock price comes down to that price. But of course, a much stronger support and a place where I would most certainly taking a starter position. It's going to be closer to 175. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, make sure that you drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts on Visa. Are you buying, selling, holding? What are your plans? What are your thoughts on this company? Would love to know. As always, make sure that you drop a like, subscribe to the channel, link to our Discord and Patreon down below. Happy investing. I'll see you all in the next video.